Hello, here's your friendly Viking MTG again, this time with something a little bit different than the Talker series. In this case, I'm going to talk about a little plan I have been hatching the last weeks. I already had dropped some hints before, and I want to give today just the introduction to this idea. I would be fully going into this idea during the next weeks. And as I'm finishing already the first video, the first presentation to this, because yes, these are presentations, no? So what I'm going to propose is a DeckRaid. What is exactly a DeckRaid? Well, this is something that I was thinking about when I was building my own modern decks, for example. So the basic idea is that it's a deck tech. A deck tech in which I will talk about different decks from any format I might be interested in the moment. So I'm very biased towards modern, so the first two videos will be based on modern decks, but I will take any suggestions on any other kind of decks that you might want me to analyze, if you trust me enough with the analysis, no? I also start with the two decks I am planning because I have played them quite a bit and I have some experience with them. But the idea of the analysis is also to branch out into other decks I don't know so well and, well, learn about them to understand the format and the position of those decks in the format, no? So the idea of this deck tech, what makes this a little bit different from the usual deck tech we get from things like Tolarian Community College, from the mana source and everything, is that I will expand a little bit more on the set of list, the set list that I'm giving. The deck list will not be like set in stone or something like that. It will base itself on variations, on some ideas that are brewing at the moment, on different ways to approach the deck as much as possible, no? Looking at those variations and stuff like that. So what you mostly will see are like the card and some numbers and variables and everything, and I'll try to explain why these variables exist or why these cards exist basically in play set, you know, the typical 4 cards, no? So as you will see, and this is very important, this will have a lot of my own experience, my own way of brewing, and some opinions that I have about the deck or what I think is best. I mean, this will not be the main focus of the DeckRaid. However, it will include part of this, no? So it's not like the most objective view on a deck. This is basically to generate discussion on the deck and how the deck is evolving and everything. Obviously, this will also be based on the time, because most probably the decks I will start analyzing the next weeks will not be the same in the next year or something like that, depending on what new cards enter into the format. No, so yeah, the idea is to give an analysis a little bit beyond. Now, what parts of the analysis will I take into account? Well, the general structure of a DeckRaid will be more or less the following way. The first thing I will do is I will talk a little bit about the deck in the meta, a little bit of the history of the deck, a little bit of the context of the deck, where the idea comes from, or what changed the position of the deck in the current meta. Always take into account that this current meta thing will vary from month to month, even as the deck evolves, or as bannings happen, or as other factors may enter, like a new deck that beats the specific deck and stuff like that, no? Afterwards, I will start with the deck analysis. First, I will start with what I call the core, which is the cards you will usually find in these kinds of decks. Usually, these are the cards that you will find as a 4-off, though there are some exceptions in which you just have a 1-off or a 2-off, or, you know, some variations on that, no? The core is usually the part of the deck that does not change or rarely changes, depending very much on who plays it, how he plays it, and what he thinks is best. This is the like least discussed part of every deck, but still the most important one. This is what makes the deck the way the deck is at the end. No, you will see that much better once I do the first DeckRaid. Now, the second part, which is I think one of the most important ones, is the variable core, or just the cards that tend to change in the numbers, or even don't precisely come in, or are new cards that are being discussed at the moment, etc., etc., etc. Here's where I will talk about some changes that can be made on the deck that would change them, and that mostly depend on your local meta. So again, in this core, it's not like an obligation or something like that, but it's how the deck can be changed, can be adapted, and can be made better according to what you play against. Obviously, this is where most of my opinion will come in. I will be talking on how I have adapted my deck, specifically if I play the deck, if I don't, what things I saw other players play, etc., 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 etc. No, so this may include even cards that have a 0 times. This means that it's not that the card is very important to the deck, but it might be included depending on what you find. No, I mean, it's like thinking a little bit about modern Junt, no, which usually includes in the core things like the Tormagoyf, no, which is the most important creature in this deck, and the variable core would be more like how many abrupt decays you would put in, or how many other kinds of cards and of removal you may put in, and everything. No, this way I will give like the options that you have for your deck, and yeah, maybe. And what I always do with this part of the deck is I buy or get or trade the cards I need for the variable core, and then change the deck according to how I feel my meta is changing locally. But however, this is how much you put of each card of the variable core into your deck depends very much also on you, and this is where the most discussion can be generated. Other discussable things are, for example, things like the mana base, which is just a basic term in Magic construction. What kind of lands we have, what kind of support artifacts we have, whatever the deck needs to make it run. The mana base is very important at the end, and it will talk a little bit about what kind of lands will support the deck. Again, the mana base is also something a little bit variable. I mean, there are mana bases that have been fine-tuned already, but still some people like to change 1 or 2 cards here and there. I think this will also be the least discussed on my side, because I usually take what other people say as a good way to see if that mana base is good. No? But there can still be some changes depending on how I feel or how other people feel about how the mana base should be. Then lastly, I would talk about the most obvious thing, the sideboard, because yes, 2/3 of your games will always be played with the sideboard. This way I can talk a little bit in general about what kind of cards are usually included to have in the sideboard, and what kind of cards could change and everything. This is the most difficult part, and I think I will be wrong most of the times, and this is where I encourage discussion. Because I want to see how people tend to sideboard. I mean, I read that every time on the forums and on the articles I read, but still, it's always good to have a lot of feedback on this part, especially because sideboarding is an art, and I think I would love to learn a lot more about sideboarding with this. So yeah, I think I can be very wrong on this part. That depends very much on the deck too. No, now in general, what is the idea? No, the first idea is, well, to give like a general deck idea. This is what cards you need for the deck, and what other cards you may need or you may not need. So you can make a decision on how you will build your basic deck, and afterwards expand it as you seem fit. No. This is a way I have approached, for example, to Modern, in which I just get the cards and then have them in a separate binder, so I can always exchange the pieces I need and I don't need. Sometimes some of the cards never enter the deck again, but I mean, there are always possibilities, and if you don't experiment with them, obviously we will not see any change in the deck. And few decks never change. No, the case of Affinity, this is one of the decks that has changed the least and the most at the same time. The least in the sense that no matter what changes we have put in, we still get a very similar list month after month, year after year. Other decks have had a lot of changes. Here I'm talking about things like Burn, especially Sue, and things like that have in the last years gotten a lot of good cards that have made the decks better. This is mainly like a auto-speaking, self-speaking, ego-speaking exercise, because it will help me understand a little bit more to analyze the deck. I think if you want to play a deck, you also have to be able to analyze, goldfish the deck, and play the deck. No. So to understand the deck, you have to also understand the idea of why this card is there, or why they didn't include that other card and stuff like that. So analyzing is always this part of the, let's say, meta game or meta thinking that we usually do with the decks, and many pros do that. No, so it's important to understand what the cards do and why a certain deck would include this or mulligan in this case, and what kind of cards you expect to see in your in the first hand, and what kind of cards you want to see later in the game instead of the beginning, and stuff like that. No, so it will help me understand, and I hope it will help you understand too. But that depends very much on how you take this. Anyway, if we can generate discussions on these that are already on the forums, by the way, it's not like I'm doing something extremely new. We can find more spaces to understand the decks we play or we play against, which is also something very, very important, because if we don't understand the enemy, we lose. No, this is something very basic that Sun Tzu says. No, that if you know yourself and the enemy, you will win every battle. If you know yourself but not the enemy, you will lose half of them. But if you don't know either your enemy or yourself, you will lose everything. Very philosophical here. And finally, well, and this is something I mentioned already, opinions, discussion, everything is welcome here. No, so and anyways, you will always be able to refer to the specific forum threads on MTG Salvation, which is where I mostly reside. But anyways, if you find any other places where these kind of things are discussed, Reddit, for example, you're always welcome to leave a link in the comments, so more people can check this out and learn a little bit more about this fascinating and complex game that we play, in this so varied game that has so many options open for us. So what is the plan for the future now? This will not be very relevant in a few weeks. But here I want to outline a little bit what I will be doing now. I will be doing the first 2 deck techs during the next 2-3 months. This again is something that will happen on a secondary plane. This is as soon as I get them ready. This is the first one. Second, as soon as there are not too many news. So it's most probable that you won't see the next DeckRaid until in 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. But I want to be doing them as I get the analysis done, because it's these kind of analysis are a little bit complex, and you have to understand what the position of the decks are, how they play around, and why specific cards are in the place. So I don't think it's an easy task, and this requires for me a lot of reading, and I already read a lot, but sometimes I don't have all the time in the world, you know, real life and stuff like that. So I will be bringing up these deck rates little by little as soon as I finish some things, or when there are no major news that I want to talk about, or I think it's a very slow week or something like that. No, most probably these videos will take like 30 minutes or something like that, so they will be significantly longer than the Talker series. Well, I will see how it goes, because I don't know how the plan looks. No, anyway, if you want to include something that you think it's necessary for this kind of series, I'm open to listen to any opinion on that. It's very important to me to see how we can get into a deeper analysis of a deck, little by little. Even though the analysis might be a little bit wrong or totally wrong, I want to be called out on that. It's very important, because I don't know everything, and getting to know everything is very complex already. No, so and for example, one of my biggest weak points would be Vintage and Legacy, which most probably you won't see many decks on that. But I hope I will be able to bring a little bit of insight to more people, to get interested in some decks, or if they are interested in a deck, see more or less what options they have available, and stuff like that. Now, this is not a discussion to generate budget options, though. This is very important. This is for people who really want to play the deck. No, budget options are always easy to find, especially for popular decks. But what I want to focus on is on the decks that are making the game. So this is like the general idea. That's the plan. And like I told you, I already have almost all the presentation done for the first DeckRaid, the episode 1. And we'll see when it comes out. No, there's no specific timetable for that, but they will be coming out. I already have 2 in mind, most probably 3. Let me see what I can do with the third one. By the way, I don't want to focus only on Modern, even though I am a very big Modern player. I want to see if I can get something in Standard, but these kind of deck rates would run out of would not be very relevant in a very short time. So I don't want to do too many standard ones. And well, what I would not do is EDH, because I think the biggest thing about EDH is the freedom. I don't like dual commander and stuff like that. So I will be focusing more on the competitive formats that are not based off EDH. I love EDH, and the most fun part of EDH is just that you may build whatever you want, even though it's not good, but it will make you happy. And finally, Frontier might be included. I'm already looking at some results on Frontier. So yes, everything's included here in this case now. So I hope to be of service and to generate some discussion. Let's see what happens. So anyway, if you still have some ideas, some feedback on the plan I'm giving here or something like that, please feel free to comment on that. I'm open to any sort of discussion. But I think the main discussion will come once we have the first DeckRaid. Knowing the internet, maybe will take me 3 or 4 episodes until we get to some real discussions. But yeah, and let's see what happens now. Anyway, comment, subscribe, like, all the things that tell me that you're liking what I'm doing. Even though I may not be as professional as some other YouTubers. And yes, you can always find me at Viking MTG to pitch some ideas too. That's where I'm mostly at. It takes me a little while to always go into YouTube and respond to the messages, mostly because I'm very busy and Twitter is the thing I have at hand. Well then, see you then on the next episode of Talker or DeckRaid. Let's see.